My talk will be, as my colleague rightly said, the first 300 years, but also including further dynasties in which the ethnic composition changes a bit up until the administration of the Ottoman era. Before I start, if anyone's interested to research further, some of the sources you may want to look up. From the Arab sources, we have Ibn Kathir in his history. We have At-Tabari as well. We have from Greeks, Cypriot sources. Makhairas is a very good source regarding the period in which I'll be discussing. And from the English sources, of course, there's the 4-volume History of Cyprus by Sir George Hill. So, what do we mean when we're talking about the various precursory groups of the Turks native to Cyprus? Turks native to Cyprus, commonly called Turkish Cypriots. Up until the early 20th century, the Turkish Cypriots referred to themselves as Kıbrıs Müslümanları. It was only with the rise of secular nationalism in which one aspect of their identity, in this case their national identity, was pushed as a primary reference point. This is not to say that they weren't Turkish beforehand, but their emphasis switched. So the point I'm trying to put across is, just as with every community out there, Turkish Cypriots also have a number of layers to their identity. Ethnically, yes, Turkish, along with other communities which may have joined this bulk. Religiously, we have an Islamic heritage. Now, regardless of what your personal values are spiritually, you could be atheist or whatever it may be, the heritage remains the same. So you can still appreciate the Islamic heritage that our people had, regardless of your personal religious beliefs or lack of belief. Further to that, so if we discuss some precursory groups, in this case, are anyone that has a similarity, be it from an ethnic or religious composition. Yeah, super. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, I'm sure all the Cypriots here, or anyone that's been to Cyprus, is familiar with this tray. Yeah, we've actually got it on here as well. Yeah, everyone knows about it. Okay. Now, I have an issue with this tray, as nice as it is, made in China.
Sold in China Bazaar.
Sold in China Bazaar. Can't go wrong. To the top left there is a number of historical dates. And to the bottom right, you have a number of emblems which refer to the dynasties which ruled Cyprus. Now, other than the Ottoman era, we don't have any reference to any Muslim communities that were there. Now, the part I'll be talking about now are referred to by Orientalists as Arab pirates or Arab raids. Now, with the beginning of the secular nationalism, we switched our alphabet from the Islamic Arabic alphabet to the Western Latin alphabet. Now, the effect of this is we had a whole generation which came out of that, which has no access to its history books. Ottoman history, completely out of the question. As a result of that, and with the education that we started having, many of our historians started referring to English sources, many of whom were Orientalists and had what we would deem today to be Islamophobic ideals. Hence the term, the Arab pirates, which now has become part and parcel of our historic books as Arap korsanları, Arap akınları. Now, why do I take an issue with this? We're going to go into that now. Now, the history of Cyprus, the Muslim history of Cyprus, how far does it go back? Well, my esteemed colleague mentioned Haram, who is lovingly called Hala Sultan by the Turks of Cyprus. She was actually the auntie of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And he predicted that she would be on a voyage to Cyprus and that Cyprus would be in the hands of the Muslims. This prediction, as was mentioned, came true. And the classical scholar Ibn Kathir mentions that the accuracy of this prediction is one of the evidences to prove the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So if you're a Muslim, this prediction and the island of Cyprus has great significance. again, if you're not a Muslim, you can appreciate the fact that there's a whole over 1 billion people in the world who need to know about this, because all of a sudden the status of Cyprus has gone up by all the Muslims of the world. Okay. And the prediction was to be fulfilled after the death of the Prophet. And the successors were known, the political successors of the Prophet were known as caliphs. Eventually the Muslim... so now we don't accept this trade, and our reps from the TRNC office, maybe something we can look into with our tourism office. Okay, so we talked about a multi-ethnic, multi-religious dynamic here. Now the communities which have some sort of stake in Cyprus, as can be seen here, the empire of the Khulafa, the pious, the rightly guided caliphs, the Rashidun, the Umayyads, the Abbasids. Now these three dynasties were predominantly, not all, but predominantly Arab. The dynasty which came after that, known as the Mamluk, which I'll be going into further detail with, was predominantly Turkish, but not Oghuz, of the Kipchak, who are to be found north of the Caucasus. After which, when the Ottomans came, there was more of an Oghuz tribe which came, which are the Western Turks. And many of you may recognize the monument in Larnaca, the Hala Sultan Tekke, an image of Hala Sultan there. She actually fell off her mule and broke her neck in Larnaca. Okay. The map behind me actually shows the spread of the Islamic dynasties, and as can be seen, Cyprus is within that realm, and they were actually competing with the superpowers of the time. So you had Arab Bedouins in the desert who all of a sudden compete with the superpowers. It's like, let's say, give me a small country, let's say Malta, all of a sudden becomes powerful and challenges the power and might of Russia and America. It's at that level. They didn't have the technology as the other empires did, but all of a sudden they completely took over the Persian lands and took much of the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, which we commonly call today the Byzantine Empire. The governor of Syria at this time, a person called Muawiyah, he was a companion of the Prophet, which we call Sahaba. Similar to what we can say, the apostles of Jesus, we can say, at that level of importance. He asked the Caliph Umar if he is allowed to lead a naval campaign, but he was refused on the basis that the Arabs had no experience of naval expeditions prior to this, and it was too much of a risk in his opinion. But with the coming of the Caliphate of Uthman, Muawiyah once again asked for permission. This time he was granted on the basis that he brings his wife along with him, and that only volunteers come along. So no one was to be forced on this expedition. So on the 28th of Hijrah, 648 Common Era, 1,700 ships took off from Egypt and Palestine. The Palestinian fleet was led by, the Egyptian fleet was led by Abdullah bin Sa'd bin Abisar, and the Palestinian fleet was commanded by Abdullah bin Qais. Again, these were Sahaba's prominent individuals. On the journey, another prominent companion, Abu Talha, was martyred, and he was the first martyr on sea. Again, we can see the religious significance. So all those may be thinking of religious tourism perhaps in Cyprus. Again, we have these esteemed individuals which have a link with Cyprus. Haram, of course, was present as well. May God be pleased with her. Now, the campaign came to a truce. There wasn't a significant win on either side. And as a result, they came with a truce between the governor of, the Byzantine governor, and Muawiyah. And they came up to a number of agreements. They would share the island as a condominium. And there would be tribute paid to both the Caliphate and the Byzantines. The Cypriots were obliged to inform the Muslims of any military expedition by the Byzantines. The Caliphate is not liable to protect the Cypriots from foreign aggression. The Muslims will not attack the Cypriots nor fight against anyone seeking their protection. The Cypriots would only contract marriages with their enemy, the Byzantines, with the permission of the Muslims. and the Muslims had the right to travel to Byzantine lands from Cyprus. There was a second expedition because a number of years after that, in 654, the Christian Cypriots broke the truce by allying with the Byzantines by offering ships to them. As a consequence, Muawiyah invaded again in 654, this time with a fleet of 500 ships. And he went there to confirm the terms which were previously made. And because of a lack of trust, as was shown, the Christian Cypriots had broken their previous truce. 12,000 men, 12,000 Muslim men were stationed on the island, and they erected mosques there. Furthermore, there were people transplanted from Baalbek, from the Levantine mainland, and there was a city erected on the island. Now we don't know what the city's name is due to a lack of sources, but this is what Ibn Kathir has related in his history. To better understand the importance, the significance of this community which came, the Prophet is recorded as saying, the best people are those of my generation, then those who came after them, then those who came after them. So that includes the generation, as I referred to, the Sahaba, the Tabi'in, and Taba'at Tabi'in, which is collectively known as the pious predecessors, all having links with the island of Cyprus. All Orthodox Muslims love and honor them. I don't know why this isn't mentioned in our tourism board as much as it should be. Cyprus is fortunate enough to have hosted many of these esteemed personalities, and I have for the first time collected the names of these pious predecessors. This list for the first time has been collected from various sources. I will be posting a clearer image once the video is uploaded. Some of the significant names, Haram was mentioned, Abu Talha. There's also one that has been in the media recently, Urwa bin Thabit, in Turkish, Urve bin Sabit, who many claim was also later rest in Cyprus as well. And we come to the Umayyad dynasty. After the four rightly caliphs, Muawiyah took power as the caliph, which brought about the Umayyad dynasty. And to further secure the island during his caliphate, in 669, Muawiyah sent an expedition to build fortifications in a place referred to as Famagusta, and also a city called Bans. There's a question mark there, but we don't know. That's what the Arabs refer to the city as. And Musa bin Nusayr was appointed the governor of the island. Although the island was shared as a condominium, a result of Cyprus being taken over was that the Byzantine naval supremacy was reduced significantly. And as a result, the Muslim Arabs at the time had much influence over, particularly from the area of Paphos, all the way up to the Kyrenia range. North of the Kyrenia range, we see more of an influence from the Byzantines. In 685, there was a new caliph and a new emperor. We have Justinian II for the Byzantines, and for the Muslims there was Abdul Malik ibn Marwan as a new caliph. And there was a number of skirmishes trying to influence dominance over the island of Cyprus at the time, but again no exclusive control was established. As a result, Caliph Abdul Malik endeavoured for a new peace treaty, and again we find in 688 that both parties agreed that there will be no military from either side and that the condominium would continue, despite the nearly constant warfare between the two parties on the mainland. Nicholas I, the Patriarch of Constantinople, described the situation as on the border between the Roman and Saracen realms. So neither was it truly in the Roman realm or was it truly in the Saracen, it's a bit of an archaic word for Muslim realms. The Muslim classification, in this case, they had to come up with a new classification for the Christian Cypriots, which is Ahlul Ahd, people of truce. And that gives them a particular rights, which we can say human rights in modern terms, as ensured as the Quran mentions, so if they keep out of your way and do not fight you and offer you peace, then God, Allah, does not allow you to war against them. So there was a prohibition to attack the Christian Cypriots as a result of this status that was given to them as people of the truce. Contrary to the treaty, we find in 691 of the Common Era, Justinian decided not to accept coins minted by the Caliph. Further to this, he deported the Cypriots, mostly the Christian Cypriots, but there were some Arabs who were also deported, to the western Anatolian city of Cyzicus. I believe it's called Aydıncık today. The logic behind him deporting many of the Christian Cypriots was to lower the amount of tax that the caliphate would receive. The 9th century Byzantine chronicler Theophanes the Confessor describes the incident as Justinian foolishly breaking the peace. So this was not something that the Byzantine people as a whole agreed with. However, once Emperor Tiberius III came into power, the Cypriots were eventually returned. During the caliphate of Yazid bin Abdul Malik in 722, the Anglo-Saxon, the precursors of the English people, there was a saint who was on pilgrimage on his way to the Holy Land, and he gave the following description of Cyprus. He said the Cyprians were then situated between the Greeks and Saracens, and were not armed, for there was a great peace and friendship between the Greeks and Saracens. So there was peace way back then. And it's maybe something which we in modern times can learn from in terms of coexistence between various religious and ethnic groups. We now come to the Abbasid dynasty during the governorship of Abdul Malik, known in the Greek sources as Abi Melech in the Greek sources, over the frontier cities. There was a Christian Cypriot rebellion once again, and therefore Abdul Malik sought the advice of Muslim canonists, because although he was leader, the caliph does not have absolute rule over the dynasty. He is still under the control of Islamic law, Islamic canon law. So he can't just go about doing anything he wants. Remember, the Christian Cypriots are under the people of the truce. And as a result, they conferred and they decided that on 711, under the caliphate of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, that an Arab fleet was sent to Cyprus, and they captured the governor of the Byzantines, who was leading this rebellion, and they restored the terms which Muawiyah had from the very beginning. And al-Mansur, rest assured, said that we shall above everyone else do justice to them, i.e. the Christian Cypriots, and not enrich ourselves by oppressing them. In 806, a Byzantine instigated rebellion against an Arab garrison in Cyprus required a punitive expedition by the Admiral Humayd bin Mayuf al-Hamdani, who was sent to punish the Christian Cypriot rebellions, and the rebels were taken to Rafika in modern-day Syria. And they were returned during the caliphate of Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid is, as a side note, very famous from the 1001 Arab Nights story. Yeah. Now, the exact accuracy, what was the dimension of the Muslims and Cypriots, Christian Cypriots living together? Were they all mixed, or was there exclaves, or enclaves, should I say? It remains unclear, but what we do know is that Paphos, the district of Paphos, Paf, was where the main Muslim influence was, and also on the southern coast of Limassol and also Larnaca. And as we mentioned, as you start to go north, particularly north of the Kureyşi range, you find little Muslim influence. In 911, there was a Muslim admiral who was ethnically Greek, but he had converted to Islam, called Damien of Tarsus. And he was a Muslim admiral, and he's known as Damiana at-Tarsusi by the Muslims, and he led a fleet besieging the island for 4 months, resulting in the eventual peace and continuation of the condominium. Ibn Hawqal, a 10th century geographer, in 977 gave the following primary description of the situation in Cyprus. He said the position of the people of Cyprus was different from that of Crete because they were divided into two, half for the Romans and half for the Muslims. And the Muslims have a commander, an Amir, and a governor, Hakim. And the Muslims had authority over the Christians in their neighborhood. So this would indicate some sort of division in the island, but it remains unclear whether there was or wasn't. Further to that, the 10th century pilgrim, Constantine the Jew, noted that there was, again, Christian-Muslim coexistence. And he mentions, they too have been granted citizenship in Cyprus, according to a decision by those who ruled the Roman Empire long ago as a kind of useful agreement. So we know for sure, regardless whether the island was divided or not, the Muslims of the island, the Muslim Cypriots, were citizens of Cyprus. Not raiders, not pirates, but they were native as well as the Christians were. Constantine also witnessed something quite unique which he found, and he wasn't quite happy with this. This is recorded in Latin sources in the Acta Sanctorum, in which he says that while he was performing prayer in one of the sanctuaries of the island, the Ismailite Saracens, the Muslims, came upon the sanctuary, for they had part in the government of Cyprus. So they prayed in the sanctuary, we can assume it's a church. This prompted the blessed man quickly to leave the island because of the prejudice he had against these Muslims. He couldn't stand seeing the coexistence between Muslim and Christian Cypriots. He saw them praying together in the same sanctuary. He was so upset he left. Nothing's changed. Okay. So in 965 Common Era, during the reign of Nicephorus Phocas, a Byzantine fleet attacks Cyprus and it achieves the conquest of Cyprus. So no longer do we see a power share between the Muslims and the Christians. Now it's firmly within the Christian Byzantine realm. After a total of 317 years. And due to internal problems, the Abbasid Caliph of the time, Al-Mu'iz, was unable to come and return the coexistence as it was. And what we know of the time, from the transition from the coexistence to the Byzantine control, there was a creation in 965 of what they call in Greek, Kuratorea, which is land holdings, crown land holdings. They were basically Muslim lands which had been taken and given to the crown, the Byzantine crown. And if we go by the confiscated land that was given to the Byzantine crown, then we know the extent of Muslim land holdings as a result of this, prior to the conquest. Certainly it was large enough to warrant the creation of a curatorship of Cyprus, a kurateria, and would have been at the very least, equal to that of the Byzantine crown holdings of 965 Common Era. We see behind me a stamp from the Republic of Cyprus celebrating what they deem here liberation, the end of the Christian-Muslim coexistence. Maybe not clear that it's the liberation of Cyprus. Liberation from what, I ask? Liberation from Muslim and Christian coexistence? Liberation from that? Liberation so that there was only one type of religion on the island? And this was printed in the 1980s. So if there is to be any kind of agreement or coexistence, I can't give my personal opinion, but if there is, then this mentality needs to change, because this does not promote coexistence. What was the fate of the Muslim Cypriots? We know that their land was confiscated. Well, we have a lack of evidence about what happened. Surely they didn't disappear. But if we are to look at what happened to the Muslims of the Emirate of Crete, then we come across evidence of the terrible truth of mass conversions to Christianity and mass destruction of mosques. We have physical evidence as well. We have physical evidence from the period of Muslim coexistence in Cyprus in the form of inscriptions, amphoras, which are amphoras, coins and lead seals. Most Islamic coins have been found around Paphos, but also as far north as the Halefka Pass in the Kyrenia range. We have a half dinar dated from 763 Common Era. In Constantia, Salamis, near Famagusta, we have coins with the word Tayyib. Tayyib, not Erdogan. Tayyib means good in Arabic. And we also have coins, the coins hint at a peaceful coexistence. Although the Muslims had power at one point, and to a certain point from Paphos to the Corinthian range they had dominance, they didn't just take any goods they wanted, they paid their way, and this is evidence for that. We have specimens of lead seals. Now lead seals are, if you're a governor or you're an official, you're a public servant, you would have a seal which stamps any official documents. And these lead seals, which we have found in Limassol and Paphos districts, have the Arabic word Kubrus, Cyprus. So we know that there was governors and public servants in Cyprus which had authority on the island. Other than that, we have amphoras with inscriptions in the Kufic script, which is a style of writing in Arabic, which have been found in Paphos. At Kukla, we have an amphora with the name of Muhammad bin Kaina in the Nashki style of script. And it is likely that he was resident in southwestern Cyprus. An Islamic tombstone, a marble Islamic tombstone, was found again in Gado, Paphos. It was found in 1935, and it has the name of Abdurrahman Ashibli. Abdurrahman, as the inscription states on his tombstone, died in the year 780 Common Era. Now, a marble tombstone in Arabic, what does that refer to? He must have been a person of a certain status to have afforded a marble tombstone, and the fact that the writing was in Arabic shows that there was people who could understand the language, right? Graveyards in this country are in English. In the south, when I went to the graveyard in Polomyja of the Muslims, after 74, have Turkish names and Greek names. So Ali becomes Andonis. But here we find that the tombstone is purely in Arabic. So therefore we know that there was a significant community of Muslims on the island, particularly in the Gado Paphos area. After the Byzantine era, there's a long story behind that, but we can skip most of it up to the Latin era, which begins with the Lusignans, which were a French-speaking dynasty. And they were Catholic Christians. Now the Catholics were different from the Orthodox Christians of the island, and they were not seen as real Christians, the Orthodox. So there was a certain aggression towards not only the Muslim world, the neighboring Muslims of the Levant, the Egypt, Anatolia, but also towards the Christian Orthodox of the island. And they were actually made serfs. There was a serfdom which was established, and a serfdom is basically slavery. You have to work like 2 days a week for your lord. In 1211, the king of Cyprus, Hugh, attacked and supported the attack on Acre and took ships to the Egyptian city of Damietta. And there was a night raid in which they were killing and capturing the local Muslim populace of Egypt and taking them back to Cyprus. So again, this time, rather than a coexistence, we now find a newer era where Muslims are taken from Egypt and are not and made slaves in Cyprus. Similarly, there was an attack on the city of Antioch on Muslim Turkomans, Turkmen, Oghuz Turks, living nearby. And the majority of the Turkmen of the city were slaughtered, and much of their wealth was taken as booty. In regards to the Muslim presence of the island, the Abbasid scholar Al-Hamawi, in his Dictionary of Countries, actually gives a description of Nicosia. And he says that he gained the information about Nicosia from an Arab man from the people of Cyprus, an Arab Muslim Cypriot. In 1250, a new law was passed in Cyprus forbidding any Muslim to challenge the Latins in a duel in Cyprus. So there was enough Muslims for a law to be passed that they're not allowed to challenge a Catholic person to a duel. However, they had the right to accept a duel from a Catholic individual. And the Muslims were taken as slaves from the Mamluks, which we'll go into, and pilgrims to Mecca were sold to Christians in Cyprus. Who are these Mamluk? Mamluk in Arabic means slave, and they were taken particularly from, as I mentioned, from the Kipchak Turks. There were some also Oghuz Turks, and certainly towards the later dynasties there were some Circassian Muslims which were taken as well. The official name of the Mamluks was not Dawla Mamlukiya. However, it was known as Ad-Dawla At-Turkiya. Ad-Dawla At-Turkiya, Türkiye Devleti, the state of Turkey. So before Anatolia was known as Turkey, Egypt was Turkey. The kings of the Turks, the sultans, were known as Muluk at-Turk, the Turkish kings. So in today's time we have certain people from Anatolia who are trying to take perhaps the title of Turk as if it's exclusive title of Anatolians. But here we see that Egyptians of the Kipchak tribes had a country which was named Turkey. And it is the only country, as a side note, after the Göktürk Empire which had the name Turk. All the others were named after their beys, Selçuk, Ghaznavi, and so on, İlhanlı. We have a king called Baybars, which in Oghuz Turkish we say Baypars, Lord Panther, we can translate this to. And he protected many of the lands because at the time there were Crusader states in the Levant. And his mission was to defend and retake these lands taken by the Western Christians, and also to stop the ongoing onslaught from the Mongols. As a result, many of these crusaders moved to Cyprus, and Cyprus was also a crusader state. It was aggressive, as we have seen, towards the neighbouring Muslim countries. In 1271, King Hugh of Cyprus and his fleet were out of Acre and objectively conquering the island, and they left the Crusader army isolated in the Holy Land. The Mamluks then, the Baybars had word that they were going to try and attack the Muslims, so he decided he would go and attack Cyprus. So he had 17 war galleys with Christian flags, black flags with crosses on them, and they went off towards Limassol. But as a result of bad weather, the boats were destroyed. And Baybars took this as a divine sign, as a punishment for why he had the cross on his ships. Anyway, the Mamluks eventually recaptured Acre, and the remaining crusading state, as I mentioned, went back to Cyprus, and they were planning on how to recapture the Muslim mainland. There was also a religious polemic at this time. An individual sent a letter, a Christian, anonymous Christian from Cyprus in the year 1316, sent a letter to two Muslim scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah and Shamsuddin as-Sufi. And the level of knowledge displayed in this letter about Islam shows that, well, there was no Wikipedia at the time, there was no Muslim bookshops. Clearly, this individual had relations with Muslims to be able to write a letter in which he is trying to discuss the dominance of Christianity over Islam. And as a result, again, bringing it back to an importance in Muslim literature, we had the two longest surviving refutations of Islam against Christianity. And for those who are interested, Ibn Taymiyyah responded with Al-Jawab as-Sahih liman badala din al-Masih, the correct answer to those who altered the religion of the Messiah. And Ibn Taymiyyah also dispatched a letter to the king of Cyprus called Ar-Risalatul Qubrusiyya, the Cypriot letter. Regarding the onslaughts against the Muslim mainland, there was an attack on the Anatolian Turks in 1337 by Hugh IV, and he forced many to pay tribute in Anamur, Alaiye and Antalya. His son Pierre I in 1358 continued to attack the Turkish beyliks, and in 1448, after all that time, finally the Karamanli Turks of South Anatolia They have been described, as it says here in Anatolian, in Karamanlı Turkish, 40.000 süvari 20.000 piyade tekbir getirip kafire karşı yürüdüler. 40,000 horsemen, 20,000 infantry called the takbir, God is great, marching to the infidels, and they captured the fortress in Anatolia of Korikos in Cyprus. There was then the Alexandrian Crusade. Alexandria is in the north of Egypt. That was in 1365. And many slaves were taken from there and brought to Cyprus. However, in November 1365, the ruler of Cyprus checked his horoscope, and there was a prediction that Cyprus would be taken away from him. So there must have been so many Muslim captives on the island for him to have been scared and to take this horoscope seriously, that he sent his Muslim captives on 2 boats to the Mamluk Amir Yelboa. Yeah, again the Turkish name, Yelboa. And he announced to the people, anyone caught hiding a Muslim, child or elderly Muslim captive would be killed. Because he felt threatened. On March 1415, there is a report of Muslim slaves on the island numbering 535. The Mamluk Akboa went to Cyprus to release the prisoners. The cost of their release was 13,300 dinars. But he only had 10,000 dinars on him. And as a result, he was able to release 400 prisoners. And the ruler of Cyprus purchased the 135 remaining prisoners from the lords. And he released 200 of them. They were released to Egypt and the rest of them to Syria. Then we come to the time of Barspay. This is where it gets interesting. Cyprus was continually used as a base for piracy, and many of the lords of Cyprus were also involved in this piracy against the Muslims. As a result, in 1424, the Franks take 2 ships belonging to the Muslims, containing more than 100 men and much goods. Sultan Barspay, as a result, he prepares for 3 campaigns. The first in 1424, the second a year later in 1425, and the final one in 1426. And it culminated with the Battle of Kirokitia. To the left is the Battle of Kirokitia in Cyprus, where the Mamluks, the army of the state of Turkey, are fighting with the Catholics, and they were successful in this battle, and they were able to capture King Janus, and they put him in chains. Interestingly, among the Franks, the Latins, the Catholics, there were also Turkmen, Muslim Turkmen. Among them was a person called Karamanoğlu Ali Bey. And they were mercenaries, so they were paid by the Latins to support the Christians against the Muslim Turks of Egypt. In 15th of Ramadan, at 829 Hijri, 21st of July 1426, Amir Tanrı Birdi. Tanrı Birdi. In Oğuz Turkish, this is Tanrı Verdi, God gave. With his troops conquered the capital Nicosia. The herald was announced that peace is in the city of Cyprus, and interestingly, Nicosia has become one of the cities of Sultan Barspay. The 15th century Turkish Mamluk historian Tanrı Birdi, in his An-Nujum, if anyone is interested to read further on this and can read Arabic, An-Nujum, gave the following regarding the marvelous Mamluk victory, and I quote, "This is more wonderful than wonder. I consider it occurred only because God, praised and exalted, strengthened Islam and his people, and deserted infidelity and his people. In this great victory, the like of which has not been heard of past ages, and the like of which no one of the Turkish kings has enjoyed. And Al-Malik Al-Ashraf Barspay, by this conquest, is distinguished over all the kings of the Turks. And he will be until the day of resurrection. O God, no one can prevent what you have given." As a result, Cyprus has become a Mamluk vassal state. The king was released on the condition of 200 dinars to be paid, and there was to be a 20,000 dinar annual poll tax to be paid to the Turkish state, Mamluk. Some of the captives which were caught, a Christian captive actually asked the Muslims, they were quite confused because there was a giant cross in Cyprus which the Christians used to venerate. And they believed that if anyone tried to attack this cross, they would either die or have some sort of anger of God among them. So they asked, if a man or a woman swears falsely on this cross, he immediately suffers harm. And the Muslims broke this cross. So they asked, why you have broken and burned it and no harm has come to you? What is the reason for this? And the Muslim answered, you have obeyed Satan, and he has seduced you and incited your minds to error, while we have been guided by God to Islam, and he has sent us the Quran. So Satan has no part against us, and when we broke the cross, after we had mentioned the name of God, the exalted over it, Satan fled from us and went to the curse of God. And as a result, the Christian with her group said, it is as you say, and they all became Muslim. Was Cyprus merely a tributary of the Mamluks? Well, I'd rather not answer that. I'll leave it to King Jean, the son of Janus of Cyprus, in 1432, sent a message to Sultan Barspay, saying, I am owned by the Sultan, and I am his deputy. He was his deputy. He was ruling on behalf of the Mamluks, Naib, they say in Arabic and Turkish. Ana Mamluk as-Sultan. I am the slave, I am owned, I am the slave of the Sultan. Yeah? This is from primary sources. What kind of influence did the Mamluks, the Turkish state, have in the internal issues of Cyprus? Well, we have the example of Queen Charlotte. She was made queen, and in her group she had a person called Sir Ibrahim the Moor, which in Greek, in Machairas's history, is referred to as Sir Brahimi du Mavron. Mavron means black, but it can also mean Arab, can also mean Muslim, certainly means Moor. Brahimi du Mavron. And there was a dispute later between Charlotte and her brother James. She had become the queen, however, her brother was deemed illegitimate because he was the bastard son of the king. James then discussed the issue, and Charlotte discussed the issue with the Sultan, and the Sultan decided that actually James was the right ruler to Cyprus, and as a result there were troops sent to Cyprus in support of James, and James became the king of Cyprus. There was also Muslim Cypriots within the elite of the Mamluks. We have the example of Sultan Inal's son-in-law, who was the Emir Birdibek al-Qubrusi. Birdibek, Verdi Bey, the Lord gave. Al-Qubrusi the Cypriot, Birdibek the Cypriot, and he was an Emir. He was of Christian Cypriot stock, and he had become Muslim, and he had great prominence. This was a multi-ethnic state. At the time, however, the whole of Cyprus was not under the Mamluks or the Lusignan control. There was still the Famagusta, which was under the Genoese control. And we see a combined Lusignan and Mamluk forces working together, and they attacked Famagusta, and Famagusta became part of Cyprus as a whole. Cyprus was united. Many of the current names which we have for Cyprus, although may originate from foreign roots, originate from the Arab words and names for Cyprus. So, Cyprus is not from Kypros, although the source is Kypros. Cyprus is from Kubrus, the Arabic word. And there is a big debate about the name of Famagusta. The correct name, and a name used before 74 and to this date, is Mausa. Mausa with a G with the hat. Yeah? Mausa. There is a big debate. I won't say the other name because I refuse to call it by the other name which other communities have called it. Which is the correct name? Well, if we go back to the Arab sources, they call it Magusa. Yumuşak. Magusa, Mausa. It's the same spelling as the Ottoman. Paphos in the Arabic is called Baf in Arabic. Limassol, which the Turks called for many years Leymosun. Leymosun derives from the Arabic Limsun. And in Ottoman sources as well, there are many references to Limassol being called Limsum. Karpassia, we say Karpaz. The Arab sources of the time of the Mamluks called it Karpaz. After the Venetians, however, took control of Cyprus, the previous arrangement of control continued, albeit the Mamluk influence had declined. There's also another interesting group. Oops, I'm going to go back 2 slides, please. Yeah. There is a group called Turkopoli. Turkopoli, son of a Turk. These were an elite military group used all over the crusading states and also in Anatolia and certainly in Cyprus as well. Turkopoli, although the name is son of a Turk, I mustn't exaggerate, it was multi-ethnic. There were non-Turks among them as well. But from the Turks that were there, and they were used because they were really excellent at mounted archery. Some of the Turks were Muslim, and some of them were baptized Turks. Turks which had become Christian. Some of the Turks were mixed, a result of mixed marriages between the Orthodox Christians and Muslim Turks. So that's another interesting group that we have among there too. I'd also like to conclude that when the Ottomans under Sultan Selim I took control of the Mamluk lands, there was Selim II took control of Cyprus in 1570 to 71. Selim I took control of Egypt, the Mamluk lands, they're called.
1517 Egypt.
Yeah, I'll answer your question at the end, sir. I will come back to that. So just to clarify, Sultan Selim I did not invade Cyprus. That was Selim II, as you rightly said. Selim I conquered the Turkish state's heartland, Egypt, as we know now. And as a result, we have Cyprus there, administered by the Venetians, and as a result of the Ottoman and Venetian peace agreement, they continued the tribute, but it was more than a tributary because on the 24th of June, on 1517, we have 4,000 Janissaries who decided en route, on a sail, they would stop over in Cyprus as well. This tribute ended in 1570. I thank you for your time. I'll pass it over to my esteemed colleague, Hussein Bakai, and I'll leave the questions and answers to the end, please. Thank you.